Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into Clayton Christensen's The Innovators Solution to tackle a massive question. Can you actually turn innovation from a high-stakes gamble into something predictable? A science for growth? Let's find out.
Okay, so let's get right into it with a problem that pretty much every leader out there faces: this constant, intense pressure to grow the business. It's what the market demands, but as we're about to see, going after it can be a really dangerous game. And look, this isn't some academic exercise, right? For a lot of companies, this is a multi-billion-dollar headache. The hunt for that next big thing, that next growth engine, has led some of the most successful companies on Earth down a path of just staggering losses.
I mean, just look at AT&T. Over about a decade, they managed to destroy roughly $50 billion in shareholder value, all while chasing growth. First, they made this disastrous bet on the computer industry. That didn't work. Then they poured over $100 billion into the cable business. That ended in failure too. We're talking massive, painful write-downs.
And the thing is, AT&T's story isn't some one-off. It's a huge warning sign that chasing growth the wrong way, well, it can do way more harm than good. The pressure to grow is one thing, but the penalty for messing it up is something else entirely. In fact, when you look at the actual data, the picture is pretty grim. Studies show that only about one company in 10, just 1 in 10, is able to sustain the kind of growth that leads to above-average returns for shareholders. A 90% failure rate, that's not a business plan, that's a lottery ticket.
So what is going on here? Why is this so incredibly difficult? Well, the answer is completely counterintuitive. It's not about bad managers, and it's not about a lack of good ideas. The real problem is baked into the very things that make companies successful to begin with. You see, the issue isn't a shortage of creative sparks bubbling up from the ranks. The problem is what the corporate machine does to those sparks. These potentially game-changing ideas get ground down and reshaped into something safe, something familiar, something that isn't very innovative at all.
Here's kind of how it plays out. An idea bubbles up. Middle managers get a hold of it, and they're just doing their jobs, right? Their job is to shape that idea so it looks like something that has succeeded before. So they weed out anything that seems too small or too different or targets a market that doesn't even exist yet because they know senior management is never going to sign off on something that risky. And this is the absolute key. The entire system is perfectly designed to serve the business you have today, not to create the business of tomorrow. It's all about making your existing products a little bit better for your existing customers. And hey, that sounds great, but it is a death sentence for any idea that is truly new and different.
So what's the fix? Well, it's not about trying to blow up the system. It's about understanding a really powerful theory of innovation that actually helps you predict how and why markets are going to change. It's about having the right playbook.
And it all starts with this really important distinction. On one hand, you have sustaining innovations. That's about making better products for your best, most profitable customers. And that's a game the big, established companies almost always win. But then you have disruptive innovations. These change the game completely. They introduce products that are simpler, cheaper, and frankly, often seen as not good enough by the mainstream market when they first appear.
Okay, so here's the magic of how disruption actually works. See that steep line? That's the big companies, always making their products better and better. But look at how that line eventually overshoots what most customers actually need or can even use. This creates a vacuum, a huge opening at the low end of the market for a simpler, cheaper technology to sneak in, get a foothold, and start its own climb up market.
The steel industry is the perfect case study here. These new mini-mills didn't just charge in head-on against the giants. No. They were smart. Back in the 60s, they started at the very bottom, in the lowest profit market imaginable, rebar. And you know what? The big steel mills were happy to let them have it. But once the mini-mills owned rebar, they used that base to improve and move up, attacking the next market, and then the next.
And this right here, this is the core of the innovator's dilemma. Every single decision the big steel mills made was perfectly rational. They were good managers. They focused on their best customers and their highest margin products. But by fleeing upmarket, they literally cleared a path for the mini mills to follow them, improve, and eventually take over everything from below. Okay, so if you're the one trying to do the disrupting, where do you even look for these opportunities? The secret is to stop thinking about your product and your customer demographics and start thinking about the job that a customer is trying to get done. To really get this, we've got to talk about milkshakes. Yeah, milkshakes. There was this fast food chain that wanted to sell more of them. So they did the usual thing. They asked customers, do you want it thicker, more chocolatey, cheaper? They tried everything and nothing worked. So they decided to ask a totally different question.
And what they found was fascinating. People were hiring the milkshake for two completely different jobs. In the morning, a commuter would hire it to be a thick, interesting thing to keep them occupied on a long, boring drive. Its competitor wasn't another milkshake, it was a bagel or a banana. But in the evening, a parent would hire that same milkshake to be a quick, easy treat for their kid. The competitor there was a cookie. Same product, totally different job.
This jobs way of thinking, it almost always points you to the most powerful place you can possibly compete, against non-consumption. You stop trying to steal customers from your rivals, and instead, you go after people who aren't buying anything at all, because the current options are just too expensive, too complicated, or too hard to get.
Sony absolutely nailed this with the transistor radio. They didn't go after adults who already had these big, beautiful, high-fidelity radios in their living rooms. No, they targeted teenagers who couldn't afford a radio at all. For them, a little portable radio with tinny sound wasn't a downgrade, it was a miracle, because the only alternative was silence. And the big guys, like RCA, they barely even noticed it was happening.
So, when you pull all these ideas together, disruptive innovation, jobs to be done, competing against non-consumption, you get the Innovators Solution. It's not a mystery. It's a predictable path, a playbook for building new growth businesses if you just understand the theories and apply them the right way.
And the results? Well, they speak for themselves. Christensen's research found that when companies followed a disruptive strategy, their odds of creating a successful new business went from a measly 6% all the way up to 37%. That's not just a little better, that's a six-fold increase in your probability of success. That is a game changer.
So here's a little litmus test you can use for your own ideas. First, is it a new market disruption? Does it let people do something they just couldn't do before because of money or skill? Or second, is it a low-end disruption? Does it target those customers who are just fed up with how complicated and expensive today's products are? If you can answer yes to one of those, you might really be onto something.
You see, this whole framework, it's not just about looking back and explaining why some companies won and others lost. It's a lens for seeing the future. And it leaves us with one final, pretty provocative question. Because somewhere out there, probably in a market that looks way too small or among customers that nobody thinks are important, is the seed of the next great growth engine. The Innovator Solution is all about learning how to find it.